All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Zoe Weaver-Lee. I am a project assistant here at GTI, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be hosting today's Q&A session as part of GTI's Taiwanese Film Week. So GTI is a 501c3 think tank that provides thoughtful and innovative research on Taiwan and its role in the world. To drive our vision, we have multiple programs, such as the Global Taiwan Brief, and we have scholarships and fellowships, public seminars, an annual symposium, and of course, cultural events such as Taiwanese Film Week. Toward the end of the session, we will be welcoming questions from the audience. You may submit a question by emailing us at gtifilm@globaltaiwan.org, on Twitter @globaltaiwan, or right here in the YouTube chat. We ask that if you're comfortable, you please share your name and affiliation when asking your question. It is with great pleasure that we welcome the director of one of our Taiwanese Film Week featured documentaries, Whale Island, to a Q&A session hosted by GTI in partnership with Asiania. Director Huang Chia-chun has been working in film and television for over 10 years, excelling in documenting novel and untouched themes. His production company, Brown Sugar Media Creative Company, specializes in documentaries, TV programs, and commercial short films. His works have been praised by film festivals in Taiwan and abroad. So Director Huang, thank you so much for joining us. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Excellent. So today we're going to talk specifically about your documentary, Whale Island, which features the stories of two Taiwanese men in an effort to illustrate the complicated relationship the people of Taiwan have with the sea surrounding them. So it is a truly beautifully shot film, and it has captivating imagery, but it also tells incredible stories about fatherhood, fear, and adventure. So I think the most interesting point you make is that although Taiwan is an island, a lot of Taiwanese people still have a great fear of the sea. So I'd like to start by asking why drawing attention to this particular issue is so important to you.
导演您好哦，就是您导的这部片《男人与他的海》，他在诉说两位男人跟海之间的复杂的关系。那这部电影里面，他捕捉大海的美丽，那也讲了身为父亲的故事，以及关于冒险的故事。那在这部片里面呢，您强调一个很有趣的一点，就是说台湾虽然是个海岛，但是很多人都是很怕海。那对你而言，为什么强调这一点非常的重要？
其实自己也是怕海的一份子，这个当然跟台湾过去的历史还有一些政治的因素是有关系的。但是因为台湾其实也是不断的在国际上有一些不同身份的改变，可是对我来说，我们必须要先从自己生活的一些观念开始改变起。那我觉得海洋某种程度就像台湾跟世界的关系，它基本上是没有国界的。那只要我们像一头鲸鱼一样勇敢使着自由的那种意志往外探索或者探险，其实到处都是希望，都是朋友。当然我觉得这样的一个想法也是我自己在内心当中不断鼓励自己的一件事情。
Actually, I myself also have fear for the sea due to the historical and political factors in Taiwan in the past. And Taiwan's identity changed internationally. I think that we have to change this mindset in our daily life. And I think like Taiwan, actually the sea doesn't have a borderline and it's just very immense. So we need to be like whales and should be free and adventurous so that we can have hope everywhere. That's how I remind myself all the time.
那这个主要的想法其实就在电影一开始的镜头，就是我们从空中看到大赤鲸在游泳，它刚好所处的位置就在一个陆地旁边，那个位置其实很清楚就可以看得出来台湾跟现在中国的一个位置跟关系。所以以前我们台湾人都会说自己台湾的形状像一颗地瓜，可是呢在这部电影里面呢，就像英文片名一样，我想跟台湾的观众直接沟通，我们应该是像一头鲸鱼一样。那鲸鱼呢，不要在海上继续睡觉了，应该要醒过来，开始往你的自由还有希望跟未来移动。
Just like at the beginning of the film, we had seen the aerial view, seeing the humpback whale swimming in the ocean right next to the coastline. It's just like how Taiwan is right next to China. We often say that the shape of Taiwan is like a sweet potato, but actually just like the English title of this film, we call it Whale Island. I think we should be like a whale. We should no longer be asleep. We should be awakening and be free and head towards freedom.
Okay.
That's great. That's great. I love that analogy. That's great. So as I mentioned, you do make this point by highlighting the stories of two men in particular. One is an oceanic author surnamed Liao, and the other is an underwater photographer named Ray. So why did you choose these two people specifically to tell this story?
那这部电影中，您选择凸显两位男人的故事，是海洋文学作家廖鸿基跟水下摄影师金磊。您为什么会选择这两位来说他们的故事呢？
其实因为是纪录片的关系，所以在选角上很单纯的就是在这个时候遇到了他们两个人，然后也从他们两位的生命跟他们的生活让我有感而发，才开始这样的一个题材。所以这部电影其实也是因为2016年我参与了廖鸿基的《黑潮漂流》，那有机会跟着他在海上连续7天都没有靠岸的这样的一个跟海洋相处的经验，才开启了我跟海洋的情感跟认知。所以呢，那时候当然就觉得，这样的一部片诉说海洋的主题的作品可以开始展开。那一开始拍摄就花了2年的时间，所以呢，电影其实是从黑潮漂流开始的，那最后才会经过2年的时间才完成。
Okay, actually, to film this documentary is to do with choosing the roles. And I met these two people and I started to understand their life. In 2016, I participated in the Kuroshio rafting plan that was advocated by the author Liao. And I set on a 7-day journey on the ocean without stopping at the coast. And it wasn't until then I started to get to know more about the ocean. I decided to use this documentary to tell the story about these two men and the story about the film. And it took me 2 years to complete this film. It started with this Kuroshio current rafting plan.
那当然就是说，除了我们文化里面很喜欢谈的缘分这2个字外，或者命运让我们相遇之外，最后我会决定这2个不同世代的台湾男性，当然也是因为他们身上都有让我看到或者是引起我省思的地方。所以廖鸿基他是一个海洋文学作家，相较于金磊是一个鲸豚摄影师，在台湾这样的2个工作跟身份其实都是非常少，或者是说非主流，就像我成为一位纪录片导演一样，我们都在现实跟理想之间挣扎还有拉扯。所以我在他们身上其实某种程度也看到我自己的处境，就像我后来成为一个父亲，所以我在常常会在电影后面跟大家分享，就是金磊好像是让我看见5年后我自己，那廖鸿基就是20年后的我现在做什么样的决定，也许他们现在的状况，或者是大家在电影里面看到他们的一个生命，都是将来值得我借鉴的部分。
Okay, actually, in addition to that, actually in our culture, we like to talk about how fate brings two people together. That's how I explain how I met them. And additionally, the reason why I chose these two men is because through their stories, I look back upon myself. Liao Hongji is an oceanic literature author, and Ray is an underwater photographer. And both of their profession were mainstream in Taiwan. Just like me, I'm a documentary director. All of us actually try to strike a balance between reality and our passion. And through them, I learn about them, and I can potentially see how it will be like for me in the future. I myself became a father, and they're a father as well. So I think that maybe in 5 years' time, what happened to Ray will happen to me. And maybe in 20 years' time, what happened to Liao will happen to me as well. So whatever decision I make now, or just like what they are doing in the film, probably I will learn some lesson from them.
Incredible. Yes, that makes sense. I actually want to go off that a little bit because something similar between the two of them, and as you just mentioned for you, and as well as in some of the other documentaries you've done, is that fatherhood is an important part of their story and who they are. So how do you think the relationship between fathers and their children has to do with the story you're trying to tell in Whale Island?
那关于这部分，我想再多了解一下，就是说，在您身上跟他们身上，都是有父亲的故事的。那你们都是身为身份，那就是身为父亲这个身份呢，就是父亲跟孩子之间的关系，跟男人与他岛这个纪录片要传达的东西有什么样的关联吗？
其实，在拍这部片的前面那2年我还不是一位父亲，在拍完结束之后。开始剪接的时候，我的第一个女儿才诞生，所以呢，在剪接的时候，好像看到了很多过去拍摄的这2年过程当中无法体会，也不太理解的东西。当然，那个是来自于你必须要真实拥有父亲这个身份，甚至已经有一个属于你自己的孩子来到这个世界上之后，才有办法产生的那一种情感跟力量。那也因为这个样子，导致我在后期剪接的时候，这个故事的走向就完全不同。从一个原本应该是比较艺术电影，用比较符号形而上的方式去处理海洋的这样的一个想法，成为了最后今天大家看到的，就是以一个父亲，然后比较叙事明显的这样的一个电影的风格在讲述这个故事。所以某种程度，我觉得父亲呢，当然。东西方的对父亲这样的一个角色的认定，或者是身为一个男性成为一个父亲之后，东西方是很不一样的。如同大家在电影里面看到，其实东方的男人，尤其是台湾的男性，可能有背负更多传统以来的一些包袱或者形象，甚至是标签。当然这件事情也随着时代的改变，不断的爸爸可能越来越自由了，但这个自由的同时呢，还是有很多很不一样的问题开始产生。例如他可能必须要各方面都兼顾，这个可能就是至少我现在这个阶段要去面对，就是过去我是一个非常自由的创作者，但是现在因为有了新的身份之后呢，可能自己的很多的想法跟计划得要去做一个改变。那在电影里面，我觉得父亲跟海最大的连接还是在于，也对男性来说，也许在还没有家庭之前，我们都有一片可以自由翱翔的海洋，可能是理想，可能是工作，但现在呢，你得要去改变你的态度跟想法，去面对你的海洋。
Okay, actually, it wasn't until after I finished filming this film that I became a father. When I started editing the film, my first daughter was born, and during the editing process, I started to feel something that I have never seen while I was filming this documentary, which means like after being a father, after having a child, I start to feel I have different kind of power or different sentiments. So that's why during the editing process, I decided to shift the focus of this film. And originally it was supposed to be an artistic film and more about the abstract story or more like formalist style. Whereas now this film become a more storytelling, talking about a father's story. And of course, the role of a fatherhood is different between the East and the West. In the East, especially in Taiwan, men have carry a lot of a burden or are labeled or have to carry a certain specific type of images. Of course, as time change, as the time progress, and father in Taiwan are more free now. However, that comes some new questions or new problems, which is they have to strike a balance between their passion and their family life. in the past, I used to be a very free artist, whereas now my plan has to change due to my family plan. In this film, the connection between fatherhood and sea is that in the past, before you have families, men can be like the ocean, to be very free and chase their passion or chase their career life, whereas now you have to make sure that you make a balance and look after your family.
那当然想更进一步透过电影里头的海洋跟大部分的华人男性观众沟通的是，有时候你没有办法面对迎接你的海洋，但是不要把这样的一个借口，好像是因为家庭，因为一些责任，所以让你却步不前。其实也许也只是因为我们没有勇气去面对，那个勇气包括你可能害怕去做沟通，害怕去做进一步跟家人的一些协调。那电影里面这两位男性告诉你说，他们用这样的方式去跟家人做沟通，甚至他们付出了某一种代价。那只要你愿意开始跨出去，这一切都是可行的。但是先不要把自己给困住，给放弃了。
So actually, through this film, through the material of the ocean, we wanted to communicate to men in Taiwan or in the world, which is you should, although sometimes you cannot embrace the ocean, but never use family as an excuse and not to step out of your comfort zone. You should have the courage and communicate with your family members. That's why in this film, these two protagonists, they actually communicate with their family, and even though they are very courageous and communicating with the family, and sometimes, of course, you see that they actually make sacrifice.
Absolutely. I think that's very well communicated throughout the whole film. So I guess also along those lines, and I'm sure you related to that as well while making this film, you talked about, the journey you had on the raft, being away from the coastline for such a long time. So I'd like to know, so much of this film was shot in beautiful areas on boats, rafts, underwater. So what was the most challenging part of actually filming this movie?
那您刚刚也提到说就是拍这部电影，其实你已经离开岸上很久一段时间哦。那很多的电影是在，比方说在船上啊，或是在方法，或是在水下里面拍摄的。对你而言，拍摄这部电影最有挑战的地方在哪里？
其实从一开始拍摄这部片的时候，所有身边的朋友都会给予一些关心，就是说哇，海洋真的很不可预测，会不会很危险？那的确。拍这部片最大的门槛跟困难是做海洋上的拍摄，因为你出去之后不晓得会拍到什么。那海上的天气的变化也是非常大的，那些鲸鱼或海豚也不会是你想要拍到它们就会出现的。所以一开始其实我就带着这种随遇而安的心情，就是我并不会去期待一定得要拍到什么，反而是出现什么样子的画面的时候，大海要给你什么样子的面貌的时候，那一刻你能不能读得懂，你能不能去理解？所以反而最后呢，我觉得这整部片到最后完成最难的不是技术上的问题，而是你对海的那种哲学性的了解，怎么样去转换成一个影像或者声音，甚至变成是一个有逻辑的故事来跟观众沟通。那我觉得这某种程度有点像是也许是很多历史上的那些思想家们或者艺术家们，他们该要做的一些转化一些知识或者是比较哲学性的东西，成为最后能够跟读者跟观众沟通的部分。这个也是后来我花了一整年的时间来做剪接的一个很重要的原因，因为这个过程当中没有任何团队可以帮你，就是身为一个纪录片导演，自己要去慢慢整理跟思考的。
Actually, when I first started filming this documentary, a lot of friends actually showed concern about me filming this documentary because they thought that it's very dangerous filming this on the sea, and the ocean is very unpredictable. Of course, the biggest challenge for me is that the weather changes all the time on the ocean, and it's very unpredictable as to when the whale or the fish will show up. And so I changed my mindset. I decided just to see how it goes. And I don't expect that when the fish will show up for me to film it. And instead, just when that right moment comes, when the beautiful moment comes, I have to learn how to interpret that moment and to read that moment. So actually, the most difficult part isn't technical aspects per se. Instead, I think it is to how to interpret the philosophical idea into an image, into sound, into a logical stories for us to communicate with the audience. I guess that's why that historians or artists in the past try to convert the philosophy or some knowledge into some stories and to be able to tell this, to be able to communicate well with the audience. That's why it took me about 1 year to edit this film. It's because during this editing process, I have to learn how to convert this idea into stories. No one else can help, and that's what the documentary director has to do.
Excellent. That adds a new layer of difficulty that I did not consider. So I do have at least one more question before I open the floor up to our audience questions. And this is just a brief reminder to our audience. We have an open floor for you to ask your questions either in the YouTube chat, you can tweet us, or you can email us at gtifilm@globaltaiwan.org. Please remember to include your name and affiliation when you ask your question. But for me, I think my final question is, while this film definitely focuses on the Taiwanese perspective, there are plenty of messages for an international audience as well. So I'd just be interested to hear what you'd hope non-Taiwanese people would take from this film.
好，那在开放观众提问之前，我想问最后一个问题，就是说这部电影当然很多是要关注在台湾的观点身上，但是您希望说台湾人以外的观众在看完这部电影之后可以得到什么样子的心得吗？
最重要当然还是自由嘛，自由包括了你可以对自己生活的选择，那也可以包括你对你自己生命未来一种想象的一个自由的选择。这件事情听起来好像再理所当然不过，但是其实我知道在世界上还是有很多不同角落或国家的人连这样子的自由都没有，如同过去台湾其实能够踏到海边去碰到海水也是不自由的，因为政治的关系，所以有很多的限制。那当然对于现代国家的观众，或者甚至是大部分这一次有机会在美国自由影展看到这部片的朋友来说，现在的不自由可能是来自于社会上的一些关系，或者是我们自己内在生命的一些疑惑跟问题。那我们有一句话叫做退一步海阔天空，就是说你在面对心灵上的不自由的时候，面对自己对自己的一种情绪上情感上的不自由的时候，也许必须要再往后退个几步，那时候再来看看宽阔的海洋，也许会有不一样的感受。所以呢，这次还是想借由这部电影，因为大海就是一个无处不在的一个最自然的美丽的风景。有时候有些话没有办法说，或者没有人懂的时候，到海上去吧。也许就像廖鸿基老师说了，海会告诉你生命的答案。
Okay, actually, the most important thing is that I hope people can take away is that we need to know freedom. You have to have the freedom to choose what life you want, or that freedom to choose the future you want to pursue. And it seems that freedom is taken for granted. However, I believe that a lot of people around the world don't even have such freedom per se. In the past, in Taiwan, people didn't have the freedom to go to the seaside due to political factors. With now, I hope that people around the world, or especially audience in the US right now, can understand that sometimes you don't have the freedom mainly because of the societal issue, or you have sometimes doubt over yourself. And there is a Chinese saying that sometimes you take one step back and the whole world is open up for you. So when you feel that you are emotionally unfree, please, perhaps you can take a few step backs and just to go to the ocean and go to the beach, and probably you'll have a different sentiment or different feelings. And the ocean, and it's so beautiful, it's everywhere. So sometimes if you cannot find an answer, or if you think that nobody else understands you, why don't you just go to the ocean and find answer for you? I guess that's also what Liao in this film is trying to do as well. He finds answers through going to the sea.
Excellent. I like that. I think our first question actually comes from an intern at GTI. His name is Henry Walsh. And he's asking, there's a recurring theme of freedom and restriction, as you just talked about in the movie, that I think both Ray and Liao struggle with. Having known them and filmed with them for a long time, how do you think the ocean and their experiences with the ocean make them free or less free?
好的，那第一个是我们 GTI 的同事 Henry Welsh 的提问哦，他说的确，这部电影里面很多就是在强调自由跟束缚这两件事情，这也是金磊跟廖鸿基这两个主角不断的再去面对的议题哦。那你们在跟他们就是拍摄的过程当中呢，你觉得他们在海洋上的经验怎么样改变了他们？他们是变得更自由呢，还是比较不自由？
当然，我觉得他们的生命跟命运都是到了海上被改变的。尤其像廖鸿基，其实，在电影里面也许没有讲的那么清楚。他过去在陆地上是一个不自由的一个状态，包括他被主流的工作给困住了，被家庭的关系给困住。但他心里面知道他有很多可能性还没有被发挥，于是他是用逃亡的方式逃到了没有太多人的海上，但在逃亡到海上的过程中，他反而看到了自己的更多的可能性，包括他的能力，或者他对自己未来的一些想象，所以也才让台湾多了一个海洋文学作家，让他把他在海上的所见所闻化成了文学的作品。那金磊更不用说，因为他从小就是读生物系的，他从大自然的这一些动物啊、昆虫身上看到那种非常具有生命力的野性，所以到了海里面遇到了世界上最大的哺乳类，他当然为之动容。那我觉得有时候人还是需要有一些跟大自然学习的经验跟机会，因为我们会看到生命最初始的一个样貌，也会让我们去想想。人类的社会制度里头，为什么不断的是把彼此给限制住了？当然，这些限制都是有一些规则或者是秩序的需要，但是还是得常常去找到自己的生命力，才可能不会受困在自己的那种心灵的小世界里头，得到了一些病。
Okay, actually, you see that these two protagonists' life change after they decide to go onto the sea, especially Liao. Before Liao went onto the sea, his life on the land was not very free. He was trapped by the family relationship. He was trapped by his mainstream job. And he thought that he actually couldn't utilize what he is good at. So he decided to escape to the ocean, and he explored a lot of possibilities for him. That's why he started to write. And because of that, Taiwan had this oceanic author as well for him to write story, to tell stories to everybody about the ocean. And the other protagonist, Ray, he actually studied biology. He understands the wildlife by looking at all the creatures. And after he went to the sea, he saw the mammals, and he actually get a lot of a sentiment or feelings after looking at these mammals. So sometimes I think that we should try to learn from the nature, because nature gives you the most primitive image about the world, about their life. Of course, we have to think about why the society actually restrict people, because they want to make sure the society is in order, their social norm. However, sometimes we should we should try to identify the vitality in life. We shouldn't be just trapped by ourselves.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for that. We have another one from another viewer that asks, what will it take for Taiwanese people to change their relationship with the ocean? Do you think that will happen one day?
另外一个问题是观众提问，他说：“你觉得台湾人要怎么样改变台湾人跟海洋的关系呢？你觉得他们关系会改变吗？”
当然还是会，就是像要有更多人投入跟海洋有关的一些领域，例如有更多的文学作家、更多的鲸豚摄影师、更多的纪录片工作者，各个领域其实在海洋都是有很多机会的。像这一次我们的电影里面的配乐，林生祥老师也是在制作了这部电影的音乐之后，才发现原来台湾在海洋音乐的作品这么少。那我觉得还是要有需求，环境才会改变。那在此之前，因为 大部分的台湾人都离海很遥远，他们都觉得不需要海洋，对海洋的关系就是吃海鲜而已。所以今天如果可以每个不同的专业的人士都在自己的领域为海洋发声，我相信就会有越来越多人需要海洋，接触海洋。那到时候相信政府就会因应海洋有更多不一样的、更开放性、更自由的一些制定或者法律，可以让人民更方便自由的去享受海洋。
Yes, of course, it will change, but we need more people to get involved with the ocean. For example, we need more documentary directors, we need more photographers, underwater photographers, and more oceanic writers as well. And the other story, for example, the film score writer, a film score musician, Lin Shenxiang, for this documentary, it wasn't until he produced music for this film that he started to realize there's so little work about the ocean. I think that as long as we have more demands about the ocean, the environment will change, the relationship with the ocean will change. In Taiwan, in the past, people didn't really know a lot about the ocean. The only thing that they know about is the seafood. They enjoy having seafood, and that's the only thing they know. Whereas now, I think we should, everybody should try to speak up or voice for the ocean in their respective area, so that we can have more people trying to focus on the sea. And by then, the government will put on more attention onto the policy or legislation about the ocean as well.
Absolutely. Great. So we have another one from another one of our viewers here that asks, about a decade ago, you directed a short documentary about the destruction caused by Typhoon Marakhod in 2009. While that film documented the destruction that can move from the sea, Whale Island does an amazing job of celebrating the ocean's beauty and importance. What was that previous film on your mind when you were filming Whale Island? What is the relationship between the two?
I'm sorry, what's the relationship between?
Yeah, between the two films.
好的，大概10年前，你有拍过一个非常短的纪录片，是记载2009年的台风对台湾造成的一个破坏哦。那您在这部的电影里面，在这个男人与他的海里面，你却是去赞颂海洋的美的。那您觉得这两部片之间有什么关联呢？你在拍摄就是男人与他的海时候的想法是什么
？2009年的那个片子应该是诉说88风灾在高雄小林村的一个小女孩的故事，但其实这两部片，我都没有着重在大自然对人的影响，而是着重在大自然力量底下人的生命的样貌。那也许在风灾里头，或者是说大地震里头，这样的台湾人民的样子，呈现的其实是跟这部电影类似相同的，就是那种对生命的一种坚毅的耐性，不肯放弃，或者是直接去面对这一些挑战，包括大自然或者是海上的风浪这样的一个人类的毅力的呈现。但无论如何，其实我觉得大自然代表的都还是人类得要去面对自己生命当中不同阶段、不同样貌的这一些挫折。其实我常常会分享说，纪录片虽然里头呈现的是很真实的人生的故事，但是它其实也像剧情片电影里头那一些主角们在精彩的故事情节的很多冲突里面去冒险犯难，也让这样的一部电影更好看。那也许回到我们真实的生命里头，我们也可以像每部好莱坞里头那一些英雄主角们一样，去迎接自己生命当中的不同的风浪或者风暴。然后顺利通过之后，也许你的生命就会有不同的样貌产生。
Okay, I guess you were talking about actually that documentary you were mentioning was in 2019 when there was a hurricane or typhoon hitting the village in Kaohsiung, and I was telling a story about little girl. Actually, these two films are very similar. I'm not trying to mention what's the impact of nature on human being. Instead, I want to express the different images of life under the influence of the nature. We see those two. This film was talking about the disaster of the typhoon, but I want to use that film just tries to express how strong life can be, and we should never give up. With actually, what I'm trying to say is that people might face might face setbacks in different stage of their life. That's why I think that documentary, even though it's been a documentary, but actually we're telling a very brilliant story about the protagonist in the film. So documentary is actually like a drama film as well. The protagonist might feel and might have to go through the conflicts or adventure. That's why the documentaries are so good to watch. So we should embrace the storm in our life, a challenge in our life, and then after you go through this, and I believe that your life would look different.
Awesome, thank you. We have another question as well from our audience that asks, so much has been made in recent years about the rise of distinct Taiwanese identity. As Taiwanese people continue to feel more linked to Taiwan itself, do you think that their relationship with the ocean will change?
那最近几年呢，很多的台湾电影都是在讲台湾人的身份的问题哦。那你觉得台湾人他们对于自己跟海洋的关系是否会改变呢？
我当然无法去想象别人的跟海洋的关系，因为我觉得这跟生命的经验是有关系的。假设在他们的生活当中，他们一直没有机会接触海洋，甚至没有海洋的一些运动休闲的需求，我相信对他们来说，海洋就是存在在那个相对遥远的位置。不过我觉得现在的台湾，尤其是年轻人，他们现在拥有更多自由的选择，包括是休闲娱乐，或者是我们对他们的一个想象是，他们能够更自由的奔放去选择他们的未来。所以我反而看到了更多年轻人其实是常常出现在海上或海边的，甚至引以为乐。那当然，我觉得这样的一个现象是好的，因为有了这些经验，将来也许海洋都会成为他们不管是在工作或者专业上的一个新的可能性。所以其实我是充满了希望，但是这是需要时间，我们只能够更有耐心的去见证它的实现。
Actually, I cannot imagine how the relationship of other people with the ocean will change because everyone's experience is different. But if you don't go to the ocean very often, or if you don't participate in the water sports, or if you don't have the demands for the ocean, actually the ocean is just very distant in your life for you. But in Taiwan, especially the young people, I see that they actually make the choice to go onto the ocean. Recently, they go on the water sports, etc. They choose to go for it freely. And so I think that actually the young people in Taiwan have actually appear on the ocean very often, and that's a good thing because I believe that the ocean will bring new possibilities for them. So I believe that there's hope that the relationship between Taiwanese people and the ocean will change, but it just takes time, and we have to be patient to see that happening.
That's great, and I think this is one of my own follow-up questions to that, because you do address this a bit in the film with the theme of moving on. So you share this quote at the beginning of the film that says something like, "I am not an island, but a fish. I can wake up and set sail anytime." So what you're talking about here with the new generation, do you feel like moving on is something that Taiwanese people will be doing in the future when it comes to their relationship to the ocean?
好的，那接下来就是我自己想问的问题，就是这部电影里面有另一个主题，就是 moving on， 就代表说向前走的意思哦。那在本中的片头一开始，那你也说了一句话，就说不是岛，我是鱼，随时困行，随时启程哦。那你认为在台湾的年轻人之间呢，是不是他们也有这样子的精神呢？那未来他们是不是能够更接近海洋？
我觉得这个时代跟过去非常不一样，尤其是这2年的疫情，很多我们过去所认知要跟世界连接，就是必须要出去，包括搭船，包括搭飞机，在不同的国家降落之后，这样才会成为可能。可是就像我们今天的活动一样，我们来自各地，来自不同的国家，却可以在此相会。所以包括使用现在网络科技这么熟练的年轻人来说， 也许他们跟世界的连结是更自由、更随时，而且更没有一些门槛限制的。只要你愿意连上网，就有机会跟世界的每个角落参与，然后可以跟他们对话跟交流。我相信这也是疫情告诉人类的事情，就是不管在什么样子的情况底下，就算疫情把我们给限制行动了，我们还是可以发挥我们的自由意志，而且不断的往前进，让世界有更好的改变。
Yes. Actually, between now and the past, especially in the past 2 years, when we see COVID-19 happening, we see everything change quite a lot. In the past, we saw that we have to go take the boat or take the airplane to travel to go to a different country. Whereas right now, for example, where we are now in this event, we are coming from different country, but we are able to meet online. Whereas nowadays, young people can just use the internet and they can be free. They can participate in the international event without being restricted. So I think that as long as young people use the internet, they can be connected with the world. I guess that's what COVID-19 is trying to, the lesson that COVID-19 is giving us. No matter what happens, you won't be restricted. You will have the freedom to move on.
That's great. Great way to connect it. We have another question from the audience that says, in looking over your past documentary films, I was struck by the diversity of your topics. Do you see a common theme linking your films? Are there particular subjects that you want to explore through your films?
我就是看您过去拍的纪录片之中，其实都探讨各种多元的主题哦。那我想问一下，在这些纪录片当中，你是不是有一个共通性的主题，是你想要不断去探索的？
的确，从第一部的纪录片到最新的这部《男人与他的海》里头呢，我都有一个共通的主题，那就是家庭。家庭里面的各种不同的关系，包括特别是亲子或者是夫妻之间的关系。那也许在西方的观众眼中，家庭应该会是一个再平常不过的议题的。但是其实在东方，特别是在华人的世界里头，家庭通常是最暗潮汹涌，有很多话或者是很多的问题是比较没有办法一起在台面上好好的沟通跟交流的。那也因为这个样子，一些传统的这样的一个习惯或包袱，导致华人在家庭关系里头，其实还是有很多问题没有获得一个解决，主要还是大家不愿意或者不知道该怎么拿出来讲。所以在我的片子里面，就直接去呈现这些真实人物在他们家里面不同关系的一些问题。那我相信大家透过电影，也许可以成为他们沟通的一个桥梁，或者沟通一个契机的开始。因为我一直觉得家庭还是一个最重要的基础，就是当你的家庭已经有一定稳定的状况，我们才有机会向外或者往外有更好的一个发展。
Yeah, indeed. From the first documentary to the latest one, The Whale Island, there's a common thing, which is family. In family, we have different relationships, for example, between parents and children, between husband and wives. It seems perhaps in the West, family is such a normal topic, whereas in the East, especially in the Chinese culture, family is maybe have a lot of underlying issue that cannot be discussed on the table. And just because of such burden in the family in the East, a lot of problem cannot be solved or cannot be discussed, or people don't know how to discuss about these issues. That's why I decided to use documentaries to use the real story to address the family issues. I also hope that the film can be used as a vehicle for the audience to start to face family issue, because only when the family relationship is stable can you go out and step out to explore new possibilities.
That's great. That's great. I definitely see that through the documentaries that I've watched of yours. So we actually have someone who wants to ask specifically about Ray and Liao, who you worked with for a long time on the film. But they just want to know, do you have any updates on what they're doing now and what their family situations have been like since filming?
好的。那另外有一位观众想要特别问跟金磊还有廖鸿基的现况哦。那您知道他们现在在做什么事情吗？那他们跟家人的关系是不是有改变的呢？
哇，他们现在比电影里头的状态跟样子更好更棒哈，尤其是台湾的疫情稍微比较松缓之后，他们就能够自由的走出家门，但现在都还是在海上，因为现在台湾是一个天气非常温和，跟美国一样是夏天接近秋天的时候。那最大的不同是，因为跟廖鸿基的认识，他知道了电影，所以他也从过去的散文的写作，这一次呢，这2年开始进行长篇小说的写作，所以即将在年底的时候，他会出版他人生第一本长篇小说，也是跟海洋有关的主题。那这个是他在这个阶段创作又跨到一个完全不同境界的一个新的突破。那对金磊来说，金磊比较稍微可怜一点，因为这个时间呢，通常是他还在东加王国，或者正准备前往南美洲阿根廷去拍不同境遇的时刻，但因为疫情，所以他也没办法出国。不过呢，反正因为今年这样的关系，他花了更多时间留在台湾，留在台湾的海上去做台湾的鲸豚的记录。然后呢，金磊也终于在今年出版了他第一本的跟海洋有关的书籍，里面也有他非常精彩，已经花了10多年来记录的这些鲸豚的照片，跟他自己撰写的一些海洋的观察的文章。所以如果各位观众有兴趣的话，也可以去找或者期待他们新的作品。
Yes, actually, both of their life had become much better, especially when nowadays the COVID-19 lockdown has been eased and they go out on the sea more often. And especially nowadays, right now, Taiwan is in a very good weather condition. It's around summer and autumn. It's very warm. Speaking of Liao, actually, he's have actually entered into a new chapter in his life. Because of this film, he actually decided to write his ever first novel fiction about the sea. Because in the past, he always wrote short poems. So by end of this year, his first long fiction will be published in the market. Whereas Ray is rather more misfortunate because usually by this time of the year, he is supposed to be in the kingdom of Tonga or in South America to film the dolphin or whales. But due to COVID-19, he's not able to go abroad. But just because of COVID-19, he's now staying in Taiwan. He's now in the ocean around Taiwan to document, to film the stories about the dolphin and whales. And actually, he's about to release his first ever book about the ocean. And they will be about the photos of all his artwork and photographies about the dolphin and whales. He will also have some stories and articles about what he have observed on the sea. So if you're interested, please look for this new work of these two people.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. That's very good to hear. We have one question specifically about working with Ray and in a moment that happened in the film. So one of the most intense moments in the documentary is the part where Ray had a collision with a whale and got injured. So was this a very surprising development that changed the direction of the story or focus in your documentary? And what was it like to experience a moment like that?
那另外还有一个观众想问特别跟金磊有关的故事哦，在这部电影里面呢，金磊他其实被鲸鱼撞到而受伤哦，对你来说这是一个意外吗？那有没有改变你就是拍摄这部电影的一个故事的改变呢？那你觉得当下发生的时候，你的感受是什么？
对一个纪录片的导演来说，其实我们都非常期待，或者说拍摄的过程当中，当然就是在等待一些意想不到的事情发生了。那当然我也没有去想说要拍到鲸磊受伤或者被鲸鱼打到这件事情，它就自然而然的在这个时候发生了。这件事情其实我也觉得它很平凡很正常，就像每个人可能在他的生活当中多多少少都会有一些意外会发生，那跟他的工作有关，跟他的专业有关。金磊自己也是比较平淡的看待这件事情，因为他觉得在海上这么久，也许总有一天一定会遇到，所以对我或者对他来说，并不会因为这件事情，比如说让电影因此变得比较好看啊，或者是他就因此 怕到海上去跟鲸鱼见面。我觉得这就是一个了然于心的了解，也就是说，你既然要做这件事情，那这些有可能会发生的代价或者付出，都是你得要先准备好的，才不会到时候真的这些事情发生之后，你才措手不及或者觉得懊悔。那我觉得不管做什么事情都要付出代价，也许受伤是一个，也许呢失去某一些生活上的不管是关系或者是经济上的付出，也都是需要的。
Yes, actually, as a documentary director, we always look for the unexpected things to happen. Of course, I didn't expect that Ray would get injured. Things like this actually happen frequently. Actually, people may actually encounter a lot of the incidents in their professional life. However, Ray actually was more taking it lightly. He kind of think that he will encounter this sooner or later anyway. So whether for me or for Ray, we didn't think that having this incident will make this documentary more appealing. This is kind of like unspoken understanding among us. So we always have to be prepared for the sacrifice that we have to make for the choice we made. If you are not prepared, you probably will feel regret as well. And so, for example, you might get injured or you might lose. We always have to make sacrifice. For example, we probably will get injured. We'll lose some relationship with people, or maybe we will have some financial loss. So I guess having sacrifice is something that we should be prepared for.
Incredible. That's great. I think we have time for one more from the audience, and it's a great one to end on. So someone asks, what kind of projects do you think you'll work on next, and how will your work on Whale Island influence your choice of projects?
那接下来是您下一部的电影是什么呢？就是您下一个计划是什么？那您觉得《男人与海》这部电影会影响你决定下一步要做什么事情吗？
我的下一个作品就是成为一个好父亲、好丈夫，因为其实在这个电影剪接的过程到上映的过程当中，我更深刻的感受到，在孩子这个阶段可能要花更多时间去陪伴他，所以电影里面这两个男主角也给了我一些启发，就是我得要先把自己的一些计划暂缓，所以呢，我也到了学校，到了大学去任教。那创作呢，这个能量，我计划接下来就是用写作的方式来呈现，所以我也开始在准备一些短篇小说的写作，那也准备迎接明年1月我第2个孩子的诞生，所以接下来呢，最难的作品就是如何去成就一个美好的家庭关系。
Actually, my next project is how to become a better husband and father. Due to between the editing process before the film was released, actually, I started to realize it's very important to spend more time with children. I also learned a lot from these two protagonists in the film. So I decided to put on hold a lot of projects for me. Right now, I'm teaching at a university. And what's next is that I will write some story. Actually, I'm writing some short stories as well. And another thing is that next year in February, my second child will be born. So I think the most difficult project I'm going to work on next is to make sure that I have a beautiful family relationship.
Well, best of luck to you in your new project, definitely. So Director Huang, our sincerest thank you for joining us for our session today. We very much appreciate you coming and sharing more about your film with us. I'd also like to extend a huge thank you to our translator for this event and our last Q&A, Yiqiao. You have been immensely helpful, so thank you so much for your help. As always, a huge thank you to all the staff and interns at GTI, especially Marshall Reed and Catherine Schultz, as well as our interns, Henry and Adrian. I'd also like to thank our board members, Asiania, and Taiwan Academy under Taiwan's Ministry of Culture for providing funding for this film festival. For our audience members, this concludes GTI's Taiwanese Film Week. So thank you so much for your participation. I hope you enjoyed our wonderful films that we featured this year. We also have a lot of other events coming up, so keep an eye out. You can visit our Twitter, our Facebook, LinkedIn, or our website, www.globaltaiwan.org. And as always, we appreciate all of your support. So Director Huang, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
All right, good night, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.